Oh god, I love this stuff. Oh, this is a new instant top 3 personal favorite project. It's a cyberpunk billiards table. Why is it a cyberpunk billiards table? Well, it glows. Anything that glows is cyberpunk. I'll show you how I made it. The primary medium for today's project is the same as it is for every project. That is, graphics medium chipboard. This is the thick slab you'll find at the back of a legal pad, but you can buy it in bulk like I do if you want. There's links in the video description below. Anyway, I started by measuring out a rectangle and then a rectangle within that, cutting it out to make a simple frame. And then, quick test of something. This drinking straw is from the party store, and it's one of those good thick paper straws, not the plastic bendy straws. With a standard size office hole punch, I think this'll fit. And yes, it does, like a glove, perfectly, almost as if it were made for it. So this frame is the top of the pool table, and I used the hole punch to take out some half circles for the sides, and in the corner pockets, 3/4 of a circle. Then I just very carefully sliced lengthwise on the straw to create the shapes that I needed to make the pockets. I decided the most convenient thing to do would now be to attach the apron. So I cut more strips of chipboard and hot glued those around the outside. Getting the hot glue nozzle in there is tricky, and not having the pockets already installed is going to make it a lot easier. Now I still have the rectangle that I cut out of the frame earlier. This will be the recessed area that is the actual playing surface. Once again, I used the hole punch to remove half circles or quarter circles for the corner pockets. To recess it, I just cut another strip of chipboard to act as a carrier, affixed the table surface to it, and glued it to the inside of the apron, like this. Now I'm switching to a much lighter cardstock. This is similar to the thickness you'll find for like food box products, much thinner. I'm going to use this stuff to make the bumpers. Before cutting out all the little pieces, I'd lightly scored lengthwise along the material and cracked that to get a nice clean bend. And a little tip for you, it's probably common sense to a lot of you, but when you do this, pre-scoring to get a nice clean corner, now you have exposed paper. So flip it over and use that side instead. It's a nice continuous, slightly rounded corner. Very nice. When you're working with really cheap materials like this, you have to overcome their crudeness with techniques sometimes. Anyway, I'm attaching these bumpers on with a mixture of super glue and hot glue. Well, here it is so far, and I'm actually going to go ahead and slap some black paint on here, because I anticipate there will be some deep cracks that I won't be able to get to later on with paint. And then I cut out the smooth finishing cladding for all of the apron. This is that same lighter cardstock. And the corners are mitered on the top surface so that they meet up. Lately, I've really enjoyed this micro-precision type work. I find working with these crude materials like paper products to be a fun challenge. One could use plasticard or hardboard or any number of other things, but this way uses trash and it's practically free, and I can knock it out in a day, which is what happened here. This whole thing took about 2 hours to make. Now, at this point, I did something I should have done to begin with. I considered the dimensions. I put some standard size miniatures up against it and realized it's too long, it's too wide, and the apron being a 1/2 inch is too tall. There's basically no need for legs or a pedestal at this point. Now normally I don't sweat scale too much, as long as it looks kinda close, but in this case it doesn't even look kinda close. This is way too big. And so I bit the bullet and started completely over. The approach was the same, I just used a lot smaller dimensions. The top surface is now only a 1/4 inch wide, and the overall size is, I can't remember it at the moment. I'll put a note on the screen in post. Anyways, here we are, pretty much back to where I was before, once again attaching the bumpers. And already I'm liking this one more. I don't have room for that top apron cladding, but I have a better idea for later on. Now, because those cardstock bumpers are in there, the original cutout for the playing surface from earlier is now slightly too big, so I had to trim a little bit away, then use the hole punch to finish out the holes for the pockets. And at the moment this recession is too deep, so I'm just going to chunk in some extra slabs there to get some height. 2 of them did the trick, and then the playing surface goes on. Oh, this was a satisfying feeling right here. Lastly, I took more of that thin cardstock and just glued a strip of it around the perimeter. Thinking to myself, I'll figure out the geometry later. Maybe this will be good enough, or I can solve it with paint. Now I decided to put this on a big pedestal as opposed to 4 legs. This pool table will be in a hall in the year 2150. It's futuristic, and also I realized I want to incorporate some lighting, so I need to be able to hide the battery and the switch somewhere. So pedestal it is. And then I set about soldering up the circuit. I'm not going to go into gory detail on this, I do it too much on the channel as is, but this strand of decorative Halloween lights comes with orange and purple LEDs. Tons of them. For like $10 I've got a lifetime supply. I think I'm going to go with purple for this, and then I'll do a blue felt on the top. Those will complement each other nicely and fit the Neon Skies trade dress. Incidentally, I decided to actually take my time with this. It was the longest part of the project, but I had a lot of fun. I was just sort of meandering along and cutting wires to length where normally I would just stuff them in. And I was caring about where I placed the battery and the switch, even though they're hidden. And there's a certain satisfaction that comes from that. There's a joy in doing things right, even if they're never going to be seen. I really enjoyed this project. Here's the first fire up for the test, and yeah, they are nice and brilliant. I decided to aim them down instead of out so that the floor below would be strongly illuminated. This pedestal is simply centered and then hot glued on. Now before I started painting it, I decided to solve the billiard ball problem. I have a few types of beads in my crafting collection, but these really tiny Toho seed beads I think are the perfect scale. If I put a miniature next to it, it's pretty much the size that a billiard ball ought to be compared to his hand. So I like these, but the problem is they have a hole in them. They're not a ball. So I laid out some tape upside down and stuck the bead down and just filled it with some super glue. Then hit it with a bit of super glue accelerant. It's not totally necessary, but I'm impatient. I think you could also use water. I'm pretty sure super glue accelerant is just water with perfume in it. Anyways, the hope was this would fill up the hole and create a rounded top. So I stuck down a normal bead and then a filled in one, got out some paint and just tested it. And sure enough, yeah, it did the trick. I mean, to the naked eye, which is going to be 3 feet away from this infinitesimally small bead, it looks like a sphere. How fortunate is that? I can finish this project today. I love when I don't have to go to the craft store. Now, instead of using the cheap acrylics from the craft store, I'm going to use the good model paints for these billiard balls. They're thicker and they got more pigment, and I only want to do one coat. I took 15 unique colors, including a few metallics, because there's no reason these need to look like the classic colors. I'm going to go more with a cyber neon sort of palette. And the technique was simply to absolutely glomp it on there. Normally a horrible practice, but I don't want to prime these because they'll go everywhere if I try to spray them. So I'm just loading up this paint and doing one extremely thick coat and then setting them aside to dry for a couple hours. Alright, let's put that aside for a sec, go back to the table. I'm going to use this midnight blue color and give a solid base coat on all the playing surface and the bumpers. But first, I blacked out the pockets. These are hard to get to. I'm going to splay out the brush trying to get to them, so rather than be frustrated later, I'll do this first, then paint over the black. I'm thinking the apron and the pedestal could be gunmetal, or at least I'll start there and trick it up later if I feel like it. Then I just took a little bit of light gray and mixed it with that original midnight blue and used this to dry brush. Cardstock has a naturally fibrous texture. You can even see it in the video here. It's not actually flat. It's got a little bit of texture that even shows through after that base coat. I'm going to leverage that, do a very faint dry brushing to make this look a little more like felt. And I've got some masking tape here. I'll use this to establish the transition between the felt of the rail and the actual metal structure. For the pool cues, no brainer, toothpicks. Just going to chop the pointy end off one side, hit it with some sandpaper, paint it with some real watered down brown paint, and then freehand black on those spikes or whatever. I don't know, I don't play pool. I just use Google image search to see what a pool cue should look like. And now the fun part. Tantamount to surgery, placing the billiard balls. I did the 8-ball first and built the triangle around that. These I attached with some white PVA glue, Elmer's, because it dries clear. Hot glue is way too bulky, and super glue would run the risk of spreading out, drying shiny, not good. On one afterthought, in Google image searching billiards table, a lot of them seem to have these 3 dots in between each pocket, so I added those with white paint. Or at least I did until I suddenly remembered that it's been months since I actually bejeweled anything. Shazam! I found some 1mm fuchsia flatbacks to match that lavender underglow. Nice. In Rook City, the Cue Ball gang makes their headquarters at the Corner Pocket Club, which is in Terryton. In my group's next session, they're going to have a combat there, so that's why I made this. It's one of several pieces that'll be used to model the first floor of the club. If you're new to the channel, what I'm talking about is Neon Skies, which is my upcoming cyberpunk / mad science role-playing game. Brand new rules built from the ground up, brand new setting, nothing is based on anything in the past. 4 years of playtesting, one of the best looking books you've ever seen. Kickstarter coming in April. Anyways, thanks so much for watching today. I hope it inspires you to break out the hot glue gun and make some things of your own. Until next time, I am Wylock. Make things and play games.